Welcome to the Not in the Job Description podcast. I'm Scott McLaughlin.
And I'm Chris Kiernan.
No matter what type of job you've had, there were situations that happened to you during work that you couldn't wait to tell your friends about.
We interview a variety of guests about some of their crazy stories from work, from entry-level food service industry jobs to doctors and attorneys. We will explore funny, gross, embarrassing, scary, and sometimes almost unbelievable stories that people have experienced while on the job.
Keep in mind that our guests or the companies they work for may be masked in order to protect the innocent, or maybe even the guilty. On today's show, we talked to Russ, who is a casino valet. Welcome, Russ.
How's it going, Russ?
It's great. How are you?
Great.
So thank you very much for joining us today. I'm absolutely curious as can be. It's one of those jobs I've never had the opportunity to do, but tell us about even the job and how you got it. I'm really interested in finding out, like, what in the hell happens? Casinos are good luck, bad luck. You get people happy as hell, pissed off. I can't wait to hear these stories.
So I went to college in University of Cincinnati. At the time, they were opening casinos, the riverboat casinos down in Indiana.
Yeah.
So the Argosy Casino, it had been open for a little while, but they were opening their pavilion and the front drive, and they needed valets. So I applied for a job there as a valet. You know, they started me out right off the bat, and I would work the morning shifts, like running cars. And basically, the casino, it was a riverboat casino, so the cars would come in at like 8 o'clock, and then the boat would go out, and it would be out for an hour, and it would come back at 9, and then we would park, more cars would come in for the 10 o'clock boat. So the boat went out every 2 hours.
So the 8 o'clock at the casino is probably parking a lot of Buick Rivieras.
Yes. So the morning shift, my very first shift.
A lot of gray hairs.
Yeah. All we did was, we call them blue hairs, but same thing. We just parked cars. We parked cars pretty much all morning long. So everybody would come in, and we would just park cars. We'd get a little bit of a break while the boats were out, and we'd go down in the bottom of the parking garage and smoke or something. But we were, just basically just parking cars all morning. And the only time we would really get tipped was when the cars would leave.
Yeah.
And I was, low man on the totem pole, like when I first started out, just parking cars. And as I got there and I learned a little bit more, the managers and the supervisors that worked on the front drive, they would take the tips on the front end and keep that, and we got everything in the back end. So anytime a car left, we had that chance to get it tipped, and usually we would get $1 or something. The trick to the job was to just work your ass off, like just run. It was a big parking garage. We had the bottom 2 floors of the garage, and the cars would come in on the front drive. The manager or the supervisor would write a ticket, attach the ticket to the keys, and then drop the keys on the floorboard. And the front drive would just fill up with cars in the morning.
Wow.
There'd be like 100 cars out there, and we'd just run and park all day long. And then the end of the shift, when we weren't parking as many cars, we would sit in the back and just wait for numbers to get called.
Yeah.
And as soon as a number got called, we would run like hell out to a car. And, that was the thing. It was great exercise.
I'll bet.
We would sprint right to a car, and then we would slowly try to recover as we were driving the car out to the front drive, and we'd take it nice and slow and drive it to where they would pick it up.
Well, that's the cleanest I can imagine. Like when you talk about who's getting paid and who's not, that has got to be the cleanest way to determine who's getting paid. Because if you don't bust your ass and you go through 2 cars at the end of every shift, versus going through and picking up 25 cars, I mean, you naturally are going to earn more money.
And then definitely. So the morning shift, it was a great start. I didn't know anything. It was a great way to learn, but I didn't make hardly any money. But I ran and I worked hard, and they recognized that, and so I moved up quick. And before long, I was working the night shifts, working at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. shift where everybody's leaving because the boat, they actually closed it for a couple hours at night, and they would clean the boat.
Yeah.
So everybody had to leave. That's when you really made the money. And
I'll bet.
you just, you'd average on a good night, anywhere between $100 and $150 in tips.
That's awesome.
Just running. And on top of that, we had like a minimum wage. I can't remember what it was. It was like $5 an hour or something.
Yeah.
So that's when you really started to make the money. And there's also the night shifts when you kind of started. The manager and the supervisor on the front drive would kind of start teaching you a little bit more about the business on the front end, and who the high rollers were, and you get to know their names and the cars that they drove, and sometimes one of them would have to use the restroom, and they would give me a chance to run the front drive for a little bit, and so you would start doing they would call it fishing, and so we would fish late at night, and I kind of had a knack for it, and that's how I got promoted into a supervisor position.
Now, how long were you in the role, just as a valet, the whole time?
The whole time I was there for about 2 years.
Okay. Wow.
So, but in 6 months I got promoted to supervisor, so it didn't take long.
Expand a little bit on the fishing. What was that exactly?
So usually a car would come in, and we're always judging who's getting out of the car, like right off the bat. Whether it's, someone, the kind of shoes that they're wearing, what kind of clothes they're wearing, what the car was, what it looked like. And, so we were always, looking at them and kind of eyeballing, I wonder if we could get more than, a $5 tip out of them. The goal was, the goal was always to get like a $10 or more tip.
Okay.
And so we would just take chances on people. Like they'd come in and we would just be real nice to them and say, you know what, tonight we're kind of slow out here on the front drive. We're just going to kind of keep your car out front here. And we'll park it over here in this really nice spot. And so when you come out, instead of going back to the regular ticket thing, just come straight to us.
There you go.
So we we would do that. And sometimes it'd work, and sometimes it wouldn't. And if it worked, we would keep an eye on that car and kind of let the other managers and supervisors know. So that way we would just continue them out there. And some of them would even ask for it. Yeah. So that's how we would fish.
Chris, do you get the impression that Russ wouldn't have even parked one of our cars?
Oh, yeah.
We parked all the cars. It didn't matter because you just never knew. I mean, you could go on that basis, but then every once in a while I had, it was a real busy Saturday and I was the manager at this time. It was a real busy Saturday. We had tons of cars on the front drive, and I, same thing. I wrote a ticket, gave it to the guy, dropped the keys, put them on the floorboard. And Valet came up to me and said, Russ, you should probably keep this car up front. And I look over, and it's like a shitbox tan Buick, it's like partly rusted out. I'm like, are you serious? And he's like, no, I'm serious. You should keep this up front. And he's like, look under the seat. And so I go out to the car, and I look under the seat. And what had happened was when he picked up the keys, he noticed under the seat, there were plastic bags of like $100 bills stacked.
Wow.
I mean, it was probably $30,000-$40,000 in cash under the front seat of the Buick. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'll just keep that up front.
So you found out the guy was a counterfeiter.
Yeah.
I will say my mind is blown that the Argosy Riverboat Casino had high rollers.
Yeah, the whales. Tell us about.
The Indiana whales.
That's the part, because Chris and I used to go to some casinos years ago, and
like
it was the
those
riverboat
riverboats.
stuff.
Yep.
And you would just get the most transient ass people that would go in there. It's hard to believe that you would have high rollers, but I guess any port in a storm, right? There weren't a bunch of casinos around then.
Yeah, there weren't. There was that one in Grand Victoria down the road, and that was it. Yeah, the whales, the big fish, they were mostly businessmen, but they would come in their, real nice Porsches, or every once in a while we get a Ferrari or like a Lamborghini. There's like a construction magnate. His son drove a gold-colored Lamborghini, and
that's what Chris drives too.
Yeah,
you didn't see it parked out front.
yeah, exactly.
In the snow. Yeah,
but yeah. So we would get some of those, but most of them were just businessmen you wouldn't even really recognize. One of my favorites, his name was Ted Gregory. He was the founder of the Montgomery Inn Ribs.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
And he was super nice, older guy. He had Parkinson's. So his wife would drive the Jaguar. They would drive that in during the weekends, but during the week he would just ride the bus down with the regular folks. Yeah,
yeah.
And he would stand out on the front drive and tell jokes to us and stuff.
Oh, that's
he was
awesome.
Always a nice guy, and he was a person. What was nice was we would get to know these people personally because they were there a lot. If we ever had a date with a girl, we would always go to the Boathouse downtown Cincinnati, and we didn't even have to make reservations. It'd be completely
awesome.
Packed. We would walk in and he would see us, and he would seat us right away and give us like the VIP treatment.
That's kind of cool. We kind of took care of each other that
way.
Right?
Yeah, he was really great. So yeah, a lot of the valets, and we would take care of the valets at the other casino too, and they would do the same for us if we ever went down to Grand Vic. So it was a pretty nice experience. I remember like the chief of police would come in all the time. He gave me like a card. Mm-hmm. He's like, if you ever need me, he's like, call this number, So we always kept, took care of him and like the mayor. So you had a little bit of the local politicians and Cincinnati Reds pitchers. We would have those guys in all the time, the Reds pitchers.
Yeah, because they only work every 4 days anyway. Right?
Not even mention the off season. Forget about it.
And one that just died, Tom Browning, I remembered him all the time.
Okay.
He would come in. He had I remember his keychain because it had a golf ball on it, and he loved to golf.
Nice.
And so one day he was in, I sent somebody out just to get a bunch of baseballs, and he signed them for us. And so I still have that. So it'd be things like that. But then some of the other high rollers, like there's one guy that would come in, he had like a bright yellow Mitsubishi Spider. And he was a jet ski racer. That's what he did. And I was like, what are you doing in Cincinnati? But he was there all the time. And he would always come in for the last boat at like 2 a.m. Most of them would give you like $10, $20. So he was a regular $20 tipper.
You mentioned like Lamborghinis and things like that. Did you ever have an embarrassing moment where maybe you hop in the car and you're getting ready to take off in it and just stall it out?
I never did personally.
Or
I never did personally, but someone on my staff did once. They were new, and they were getting in, I think it was like a Mustang, and they got in it, and they just
popped the clutch.
Yeah, they popped the clutch, and it didn't go well. And I nicely pulled him out of it because the customer was still there, and I nicely pulled him out of it, and I said, I will talk to you later, and I had somebody else park it. And then I found that valet, and I had a Ford Ranger, like a manual speed Ford Ranger, and so I just drove him around town for like 20 minutes until he got the hang of it.
Right.
So I kind of worked with him. But yeah, every once in a while you get somebody that would
here,
drop the transmission.
Along the same lines, have you ever run into cars that you're not even sure how to drive? And I only bring this up because I own a Tesla.
Yeah.
And they're not exactly like your normal turn the key cars. I mean, it's not like they're hard. It's just if people have never driven them, and I'm scared to death to take that thing anywhere for fear that the 16-year-old kid parking my car is going to be like, okay, what do I do?
Oh, yeah. Like, because when I was there, it was like 97, 98, 99. We had a lot of cars. Like, that's when you first started seeing like the push buttons.
Or the paddle shifters.
Yeah. Some of the paddle shifters. Clutches are different, like the Porsche clutches, the way they work, their pedals, are a little weird. And yeah, when you get to the fancy cars, their pedals are so small and they're so close together.
Right.
Like you need like a size, 6 foot to really operate those comfortably.
You wonder how those NBA drivers or NBA players can drive them, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not a big guy. I had a hard time getting in and out of those cars. I can't imagine a big person doing it.
Size 20 shoes.
So, but like Hummers, like these were some of the first Hummers that were coming out, and they were, the original military trucks that they were converting. So those were, they weren't too bad. They were a little tricky, but diesel, if we would have a diesel truck, those are tricky. Knowing how to start them,
right.
Takes a little practice. But
Someone dropping off a panel truck before they go gambling.
Any 18-wheelers ever pull up?
you had to have everything from like really, really small cars to like the big dualies and prowlers. Those were popular at the time, so we'd have like some prowlers. There was a guy that he was a favorite amongst a lot of people. He drove a purple prowler, but he was a self-made millionaire. He was a janitor, has this large family, like several kids. He just started playing the stock market and got really good at playing the stock market and made himself like a self-made millionaire. But he would come to the casino all the time, but he never gambled.
That tells you how smart he is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So he never gambled, but he'd bring clients. But he would save money at the end of the night. And this is why everybody knew who he was, because he would tip the cocktail waitress $100. He would tip the valet $100. He would, he would tip the dealer $100. And then the first loser, like he would walk off the boat and talk to people. And the first loser that he met, he would give them $100.
Oh, wow.
So the whole casino knew him. And he was definitely a favorite.
I bet you get a lot of characters in any casino. But, when there's such a rare, it cracks me up because there's a casino in Central Ohio now, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's casinos all over the place. You could drive to a casino right from where I am in 30 minutes. But back in the day, it was a trek.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd get people from all over, and they would, they'd drive all day.
Right. Yeah. It was cheaper than going to Vegas.
But it was fun as you get to know some people. We would always ask them, how'd you do? And I was up $150,000. It's like, holy cow! But I gave it all back, and another 70,000. And it's like, holy cow! How do you give that money away?
Right.
Well, those casinos aren't there because they lose money.
No,
and
the house always wins.
Yeah, I get a kick out of that. And I saw somebody with a T-shirt one time, and it says, "How to win at roulette. Step 1: own a casino." And I feel that way. And I'm a gambler. I'll play poker, but that's not really gambling. That's betting on me a little bit.
Right.
But there was a guy that I worked with a million years ago at JCPenney's, and this guy was old as dirt. He was probably 45.
Yeah.
And to me, when I was 19, he was old as dirt. And he would say, I want another ticket. He'd have all these scratch-off tickets and stuff. And when I tell you he won, I mean, he would show me tickets where I won $1,000. I won $2,500. Like, I couldn't believe how this was happening. And I was so young, it never really clicked. And then one day he showed me this scratch off, and it was to go on the Cash Explosion show. And so, sure as shit, this guy goes on the Cash Explosion show and wins $28,000.
Holy cow.
So when he comes back to work after they tape that, he tells me he won. And I said, I got to ask you, Tom, now that, you buy all these tickets and you do all the scratch offs and everything, if you had to guess, based on how much you've won versus how much you've spent, where do you think you are? And he paused for a second and he goes, I'm probably about even, which tells me bullshit. You're probably even further in the hole.
Yes.
Right.
Because I don't know many people that go to the casinos and talk about how they love to lose money. They just will always tell a story. I just broke even, just gave back the house's money.
And it was always an excuse, on why they lost. It was because someone hit, on blackjack when they shouldn't have. And that was the other thing. We would hear all of the complaints
sad
about
stories.
Yeah. So we learned what not to do if we're, at the table, that's for sure. But yeah, it was interesting. Like, we had a guy, he was Greek, and he would come in his Jaguar, when I first started, and he would tip $20 on the front drive. And I think within 2 years, he was driving like a shitbox Buick and tipping like $1.
And there's the lesson, kids. When you hang out at casinos all the time, that's what happens to your money. I don't know anybody who hangs out at a casino a lot and, has enough money to do anything other than have a hobby.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that way. Yeah, I don't know. Or maybe I just don't know people good enough at casino games. That could be too. All right, so you brought up a very important point. Say that 3 times. You brought up a very important point I wanted to bring up, and that is you found somebody that had tens of thousands of dollars under the seat.
Yeah.
Before we were meeting today, I just had to look. Is there anything out there online about crazy stories of valets? And there are plenty. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to look any of these up.
No, I haven't.
Oh, they're fun. I was looking at thethrillist.com, and there's just people giving their little spiels, and they're not very long, but somebody said it's not uncommon for people to leave private shit out in the open.
Oh, yeah.
This one dude just left his bag of drugs, and I'm not talking about weed, just out on the passenger seat, and it wasn't just some drugs. It was piles and piles of powder portioned out with zip ties.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I mean, what kind of stuff did you see that people just leave out in their cars because they're just dropping it off?
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere with it.
Drugs for sure. Weed. Lots of weed, but definitely drugs. Tons of guns. This one guy, I remember him open up the trunk to the car, and it looked like, the trunk from Riggs from Lethal Weapon. It was just filled with guns. So it's mostly those types of things. But then some people would just leave trash. Like, some people's cars are the most
don't get me started.
disgusting cars. Like, I remember this one car, it was filled, the back seat, and it was like a bench seat of a sedan, and the floorboards, it was filled all the way up with lottery tickets and chicken bones. So it's like scratch-off tickets and chicken bones all the way up. And when I first drove the car, it kind of lurched, and when it did, she had a bunch of tickets stuffed above the visor in her car, and they all fell down on top of me, and I'm like, I just wanted out of the car. So I drove and I parked it, and I just got out of the car as cleanly as I could and shut it. And then later when she picked up the car, she was very upset because apparently those were all the winners. And she thought somebody had stolen them. And of course we didn't. They're all in the car. It was such a mess. So yeah, we would see a lot of crazy things in the cars.
That kind of reminds me of I have a valet story for when I was dating my wife a million years ago. We're poor or whatever, and it was an anniversary or something. So we went to this restaurant in downtown Columbus. I don't even know if it's still there. One Nation. I don't know if you remember that, Scott. It was on the top
I remember that. That was a big deal.
Nation, right. So I'm all excited, taking my girlfriend at the time to this fancy restaurant, and I had one of those shit box, a Pontiac Grand Prix that I just trashed on.
Yeah, that was nice.
I mean, it was nice when I first got it, but by the time I got rid of it, I just trashed it.
All the lottery tickets and chicken bones in the back. It was crazy.
So we get there, and it's valet parking because it's downtown Columbus. So the guy comes and he lets me out, and I'm walking around, and as he opens the door for my girlfriend, a juice box falls out. Because I just had shit in the car. And the guy looks, he's like, "Is that a juice box?" And I was all embarrassed. I'm like 19 years old, like, yeah. And so that's my embarrassing valet story.
Chris is quite the baller, entertaining his women with juice boxes in the car.
We're married now, so it must
It
have
works.
worked.
I guess it did work. So, I mean, did you ever have anybody have any requests that seem a little weird? I read where one that stuck out in my head, which I thought, this is just so odd. They said that this girl pulled up with her dog in the car with the window cracked and said it was the temperature's okay, that the dog could stay in the car. But then she asked the valet if he'd mind walking the dog a few times while she was inside.
We never had requests like that.
Okay.
I know me personally, if there was a dog in the car, I would tell him park yourself.
I'd have a problem with that
I'm
too.
not dealing with that.
Right.
Unless they gave me some money. Like if they gave me $20, $30, I would probably find a valet to walk it every once in a while. But no, I never personally had that happen with any animals.
No weird,
or pets.
but any other weird requests where they wanted you to do something?
I did have weird requests. I mean, the coolest request was the guy with the Lamborghini. And we had a few of them, but he would have me go fill up the tank every once in a while. And that was always fun.
Yeah.
And he would give me like $100, and the tank on those things is like 10 gallons.
Right.
Back then it was $1 a gallon. So,
Yeah,
$10, I get to keep 90. Yay. So we'd have those kind of requests. I had a guy that gave me $200 to hang out with him at a strip club.
Oh, wow.
So while I was working, so I just...
All right, I got to stop you right now. $200, I'm like, yeah. But a dude saying, hey, come with me to a strip club. Did you have any red flags going off?
No, we known him. He was a regular. He would come in all the time. He was just lonely. Bored,
oh, wow.
But he would go, and of course, I knew the people at the strip club, so I would go to the strip club, and I knew a lot of the girls because some of them, we knew or were dating, or their husband or boyfriend worked with us.
Okay,
so
right.
We had connections with, and this strip club was really close to the casino, so I was like, sure, I'll go hang out with you for.
All right, tell the truth. When you left there, how much of that $200 did you have left?
I had all of it.
I
didn't spend it. I didn't spend a penny. So,
and your boss was okay with that? You're just like, hey,
oh yeah,
boss,
he's
I
like
$200.
That's awesome. Especially because the way the front drive worked, so we had 3 managers and 3 supervisors, and we split all the money up front. So any money that we got up front, we would split. So we always found a way, to accommodate some of those things because that meant more money. And yeah, that was nice because 7 days a week, even if I was working or not, I could go into the front drive and there would be an envelope with my name on it, anywhere between $150, $200,
Nice.
every day. So that was nice. So yeah, we would always accommodate people. We would, because it was in Lawrenceburg and taxis were not really accessible, we would drive the drunks home quite a bit.
Oh, wow.
And then find a way to get their car to them, the next day.
Now that's service, man.
Yeah,
right.
And people, they would give us $50, $100 to do that.
I would do that if I had somebody could drive. I mean, even the equivalent today to drive my car home for me because I had too much.
Yeah, we would do it all the time. So yeah, we would drive their car home, and then another valet would come pick us up, and we'd go back to work. So we did that quite a bit.
So when I think about valets, one of my favorite childhood movies is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
And in fact, I don't know why I think this is so funny. It's with the valet, but it's not the car driving part.
Right.
It's the part where Matthew Broderick's character says to the guy who looks like he's like, a little rough, he goes, do you speak English? And I love the way the actor goes, what country do you think this is? But I always got a kick out of that, and I had to wonder, these guys are they're in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
You've got a captive car with a boat that is going offshore.
Yeah, they're locked on the boat. Yeah.
They're locked on a boat. Was there any shenanigans with like, all right, well, we're going to take this Ferrari and see how fast it can go?
Not really, no. And the reason being was we were making so much money doing this that we didn't want to risk our job.
Yeah.
Like, the valets at like restaurants and things like that, they do pretty good, but we were making ridiculous amounts of money.
You talk about $150, $200 cash every time you work. That's
I'm in my mid-20s, and I think I was pulling down between $65,000, $70,000 after taxes. Like, it was insane. and you would just have cash in your wallet all the time. So,
Right.
you know, I'd be at the grocery store and I'd go to pay for groceries, and I would realize I had like $3,000-$4,000 in cash in my wallet. I'm
Nice.
like, oh my God, I got to do something with this.
Right.
And so here you have a bunch of 25-year-olds that have, you know, ridiculous amounts of money. So we were buying pool tables and big screen TVs and
Oh, yeah.
throwing parties, and like it was crazy.
Can you imagine, like, I don't know where you are in your career, but all the money, Chris, that we wasted growing up,
Oh,
we could have been retired 5-6 years ago, but
Right.
we just blew it on stupid shit like
Oh,
that
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely blew a lot of money working here.
My theory on that is, doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. If it seems like the money is coming quick and easy and
Yeah.
like there's never going to be an end to it,
Yep.
you will not hang on to that money.
Oh, yeah.
It's just nature.
Yeah. 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 You find yourself just spending it on frivolous things.
Oh, yeah.
Like I remember one year for 4th of July, I know we spent like $4,000 or $5,000 on fireworks.
Mhm.
You
Oh,
just-
God.
Just a bunch of us. Yeah.
Was there a time then that you thought, who needs the University of Cincinnati? I got the
well, I
greatest
did.
gig right
I
here.
completely dropped out of school.
Okay.
So I dropped out. I
If I
eventually
was
did
making
go back
65,
later on.
70 grand a year, I probably would have
right.
too.
That's
Yeah.
that's a lot of temptation.
Yeah, no, I dropped out and definitely was thinking I'm gonna do this the rest of my life. You know.
And this guy has the temptation to go into a strip club and not spend a penny. So
That's discipline.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
discipline.
Well, that's one thing I learned there was discipline, because we would go gamble at the Grand Victoria, and what was fun was their boat went on a different hour than the Argosy, and there was also a time change during parts of the year. So when our boat would close, we would drive like maniacs, because it was about 35 minutes away. We would drive like maniacs down to Grand Victoria and get on the last boat, and we would
Okay.
gamble there and stuff. But I learned real quick that I'm taking $100 and this is all I'm spending. You
Yeah.
know, if I win, I win. If I lose, you know, who cares? And so I definitely set rules for myself just from seeing the way everybody else,
Right.
you know, all the customers that would come in and out and all the
Oh,
money
my
they would
God. It
lose.
had to be miserable. I mean, how many people had shitty dispositions coming out of there because they lost their ass?
Yeah, and then they would come back the next day. you
Right.
know?
Oh, God.
Right.
And you'd get a couple that would come in on Monday, and then she would come in with her boyfriend on Tuesday, and then he would come in with his girlfriend on Thursday. And sometimes I felt like they were tipping us just to keep our mouths shut.
Yeah,
you
right,
know?
right.
You should have made a whisper there, and you would have guaranteed that's why they were.
So, I mean, you know, you're working at a casino. Did you start to fraternize maybe with the dealers, learn some tips and tricks
Yeah.
to try to maybe beat some of these games?
Oh yeah. We would hang out with the dealers, you know, and the dealers, they all had their own tables. It was kind of interesting. So they would have parties and they would be the house, and
Gotcha.
they would do their own. I remember
casino
we
night.
threw one party, and we had 4 or 5 different dealers who were doing blackjack and poker and different things. So yeah, they would give us tips. I mean, it's nothing crazy from what you normally see. You know, your blackjack. You know, you got the basic rules. It was, a lot of it was just discipline. Again, very disciplined. I personally, I would like to try to find a table that's completely empty, and I would sit at the end of the table, and I would play like 2 or 3 hands by myself, so I didn't have to worry about anything. And I always felt comfortable doing that. To me, that's the way I was able to always kind of break even doing that.
Yep.
But I
I'm
mean,
picturing Clark Griswold.
You were
But
betting on the flip of a quarter? Heads. Oh, sorry, tails.
I'm thinking of a number. 4.
One-
7.
One thing that like the roulette, or not the roulette, the craps tables,
Yeah.
they would say, you know, look for the hot tables. Like, so that's what I would do. I'd kind of walk around, look for the hot tables, and then just kind of join in.
Working your way in, yep.
Yeah.
See, in my experience, the hot table is just the one where people are having fun, because there's no difference with the
No,
dice.
there's
no
not.
anything. It's just there's an energy there, and you'll feel good. And who the hell wouldn't want that if you're the casino owner? Get everyone feeling good, and they can drop off 80% of what they came here with. Yeah, that's funny. So, in the time frame that you were there, anybody screw up bad enough to get fired? Do you have any run-ins, any
Yeah.
scratches?
Yeah. So we all had insurance, car insurance, but it was only good once. So if you wrecked a car, the insurance would pay for it, but then you would be out of a job. 'cause you couldn't be insurable. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So when there were accidents, we would pay for it ourselves. We would just pay for it out of our own money, because it was
Right.
We didn't want to lose the job.
worth
like
the risk,
job,
yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So personally, I had one of them great big dually trucks, took the corner just a little too tight, and I took like the wheel well off the the driver's side. Yeah, I just kind of turned a little too tight. So I think that cost me, and it wasn't that much. It was about $3,500. So
sounds like a lot to me.
Yeah.
But
to me at the time, exactly, like in 2 weeks, I had that back. So, but yeah, we would have little things like that. We would also have my favorite car accident. There was a guy that he was running late, he and a bunch of buddies, and they come flying in the front drive, and they hop out of the car so quick, and they're like running. I'm trying to get them a ticket quick, and they run, and they did not get the car all the way in park. Oh. And as soon as that car door shut, the car just kept driving, and it just drove right into a pillar, just smashed right into a pillar. And they did not make the boat. Let's just say they had to deal with that. But
right. So fortunately, that was not you guys, right?
Yeah,
You're like, hey,
that
man,
was
that's all you, right?
My my buddy that was working the front drive with me, he got a rear view mirror right on the side of his like rib cage. It knocked it right off. He was sore for a few days.
Oh yeah.
I imagine during those times, because you're a young guy, you're making cash, the job's the same every single time.
Oh
right?
yeah.
I mean, you just have to execute.
Yep.
And you got to do it quick because there's a timetable, right?
Yep.
I mean, you've got this boat that's either coming or going. It's got to be like the last chopper out of Vietnam every time that boat gets in.
Oh yeah. And like Saturday mornings, I mean, the drive was huge. Our front drive was really big. I don't know if you've ever been down there, the Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's got that big front drive. And we could pack, 100 cars in there, and then we'd still have cars out on the street. And as soon as we could clear out one lane of cars, we'd just cycle a bunch through, and we would just try to get as many in. Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, there would be so many cars. We'd just keep trying to get them in as fast and as we could, because the more we get in, the more money we make.
Right.
That's a good deal.
Ever have any like police show up and they're like, hey, we got a tip that there's a stolen car here? I mean, anything like that?
No, nothing like that. We had I remember it was late at night. I was sitting on the front drive, and I would always do like crossword puzzles on the front drive. And this guy just bolted out through the front door of the pavilion. He's just running. There's a water fountain right there. So he ran right by the water fountain, and it was kind of weird. And I'm sitting there, and I could see the security police, and they had bikes, and they would roam the garage. I could see two of them come flying out of the parking garage. And so he's running this way, and they're coming the other way. And I just see him jump off the bike and tackle the guy.
Nice.
And what it was during a dealer change outs, they were, there were some stacks of cash, and he just grabbed cash and ran. And I was impressed, because the riverboat was, 200 yards probably away from the front door of the pavilion. So he ran through that whole building, down the stairs and out the front door. I mean, I was impressed he got that far. And then, he got out almost out to the road when the security guards caught him.
Yeah, it's funny. When you go to casinos, usually you have a combination of people who think they're going to win money in casinos.
Yeah.
Bad judgment. And possibly some alcohol going on.
Yep.
Bad judgment.
Yep.
Did you ever have anybody who maybe accused you guys of stealing something or doing something to a car where clearly you guys were like, no, I mean, outside of your lottery tickets, somebody's stealing them? You ever have any of those scenarios where you had to try to explain, like, no, we didn't?
Sometimes with cars. That was one thing we stressed a lot with when training the valets, is to make sure you walk around the car and mark any dings or damage.
Yeah.
That was probably the most important thing when you're parking a car, is to just inspect the car, because that would save you problems later on.
Right.
So that was important. So, but we would have it every once in a while, depending on the situation. I as a manager would then write a report and give it to, my bosses, and they would handle it from there, either the insurance or, so not too often. Anything where we know we were responsible, we would self-report. Everybody self-reported. Right. They were pretty good about it. Again, it was, if you got caught, you lose your job. Nobody wanted to lose their job. So everybody was usually pretty careful.
You ever give someone back the wrong car?
No.
There was a pause there. Are you sure?
We've had instances where keys would work in different cars, and that's weird.
Yeah.
So we've had that happen, but we never gave anybody back the wrong car. We had times where we would lock keys in cars every once in a while.
Yeah. Did you ever lose keys?
Or customers, we lost keys. I remember one time, but they had a spare set. But we, my boss had a lockout kit, and he taught
Okay.
us all how to use it.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting a lockout kit. I still have it. It's handy every once in a while. But
Just break into cars at will now. Good for you.
I'll get your number when we're done.
But yeah, so we had a Slim Jim, so that was one thing. We had a lot of little side hustles, so the security guards weren't allowed to take tips or anything. But anytime somebody locked their keys in the car in the garage or something, they would come to us, and we would get the car open for them. And instead of them waiting 45 minutes for a locksmith to come from Cincinnati, they would get it relatively quick and then give us like $30, $40. Later on, we would meet the security guard and tip them out.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the greatest part of that job had to be you knew if you screwed up, the clock was ticking, but you had time.
Yeah.
The boat has left.
Yeah.
You've got what? How long were these little excursions? A couple hours? 3-4 hours?
Yeah. They would be out for 2 hours.
Okay.
So we would usually have a good half-hour, 45-minute break. And, that's when we would eat. And like I said, we would smoke. We all smoked. We would all go down the parking garage and smoke in the basement.
And then probably a half hour before the boat comes in, the new set of people are rolling up.
Yep.
waiting to get on,
And
right?
that
was probably chaos, trying to get the new people coming in versus the old people that are coming off, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, but what was nice was the new people would come in on the front drive, and the old people were going out through the garage. So it wasn't too much turnover. So that made it nice, especially with the volume of cars that we had coming through.
So, again, we're talking about people at a casino. They've got some, maybe some judgment issues.
Oh, yeah.
You're a young man standing outside in front of a casino, parking cars. You ever have any ladies come out and offer you to go home with them because they just got out of the casino and maybe they left someone there or maybe they didn't?
No, I didn't. I never had any ladies offer. I had a pimp offer once. So
A pimp offer you a
his
job or a
ladies,
woman?
His ladies.
Okay, I thought you were going to be a man whore.
No. He was a regular. We all called him Ed the Pimp. I don't know. He looked like
pimp.
Yeah.
It's weird he was named that.
I know.
It's right on the dot as far as what he ended up doing.
He looked like Hugh Hefner. He was like an older guy, with the gray hair. And I mean, that was his look.
That's a great look for a
Oh,
pimp.
yeah. It was great. The collar, the shirt was always a couple buttons open.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a Cadillac.
Of course he did.
Yeah, a great big boat
Naturally.
Cadillac. He had a driver, and the driver was missing his arm from like the elbow down on the right hand, but he always had a gun in his coat.
I take it he's into crossfiring.
Exactly. But yeah, and then Ed would always get out of the back seat, and it would be always like 2 or 3, 19, 20-year-old looking girls, and very attractive. And he always, "Hey Russ, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing great, Ed. How are you?" And he's like, "What do you think of Candy over here?" "Hey, Candy, bend over for the boys."
Oh my God.
And then he would kind of sneak up to me and whisper, "Hey Russ, you can take her out in the car for a little bit." It's like, no charge, I'll be, "Oh, that's all right, Ed. Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate it."
Right.
So yeah, we would have that quite a bit. He was a regular, so everybody knew him.
I mean, it's a wonder they weren't trying to hit you guys up for the whales. Like, hey, let me know who's in here because, anytime that there's the Super Bowl, anytime there's big betting things, it appears that there's just this entire group of people that, will take prostitutes, and prostitutes will go to all these venues. But certainly hotels and casinos are known for that kind of stuff. It's a wonder that they didn't try and get in your head, or maybe they had somebody in the boat to say who the whales were.
They might have had somebody in the boat, yeah, because they didn't really with us too much. So we would see them coming in and out. We would see a lot of like bookies. There's a lot of guys that we could tell they were sports books. They would come in and out. We had a family of like gypsies. That were regular at the boat.
What year did you do this?
So yeah, like 97, 98. I know.
They were probably
but
pickpocketing people in the
They
casino.
they were pickpocketing. They would do this. They had this whole money changing scheme where they were asked for change. And I know a couple guys, valets that fell for it, and we started to catch on to them. Security, everybody knew it was, but there's a family, like a couple girls and the mom. The mom was a psychic tarot card reader down the street.
That's freaking awesome, dude.
But they would come in, and the girls, and it was very attractive. Like the girls were very attractive, and they would go onto the boat, and they would hang out with older gentlemen that were playing the slot machines. And they had this little scam where they would say, "Hey, I'm good luck. Let me, put the money in and pull the lever for you, and it'll bring you good luck. And so they would just kind of randomly hit guys up for that. And of course, if they win, they get the money,
Yeah,
not the person.
that.
Yeah, so
Right.
they're the ones that actually get the money because they're the ones that put the coin in and pulled the lever. So it was a nice little scam that they had going, and so the security guards were always kind of watching them. So whenever they came in, we would let them know, hey, they're here.
They're here, right?
And they would just kind of follow them around.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, they would get you. And it would be so fast. Hey, do you have change for 20? And all of a sudden, you're giving them $30. You don't even realize you're doing it.
Yeah, I only know some dork that took a fake $100 bill one time at work. And my son's across the way giving me the finger. Yeah, it was him. So anything else that stands out in your mind is when you look back on your times of doing that job as a pretty much a young man, like what was the best, what was the worst?
The best was, just the money. Like, it was a lot of good money, a lot of parties, a lot of friends. I made a lot of friends. I'm still friends with the valets that I worked with today. I enjoyed the work. It was fun work. I was in the best shape of my life.
Oh yeah.
Because you are running. There's one guy that worked with us. He was a bodybuilder, and he couldn't gain weight. He couldn't even keep weight because we're running so much. He would eat 3 Big Macs and 4 protein shakes a day and still lose weight. So you were probably, I know I was in the best shape of my life there as far as just running all day long, even though I'm smoking like a pack of cigarettes a day at the time.
It evened itself out.
Yeah. So best shape. Stories, I have a lot of, a lot of memories. Larry Flint. I don't know if you know who Larry Flint is. He was a regular.
Okay.
He's an asshole.
I'm
sure
he's not still with us, is he?
I don't know if he's still alive or not. But he had a gold-plated wheelchair.
Yeah,
right.
He didn't tip at all. Nobody liked him because he was a terrible tipper.
Crusty old man.
His brother, I drove his brother home a couple times. He would get too drunk on the boat, and someone would have to drive him home. He got thrown off once for peeing off the side of the boat, so I drove him home after that one time.
Pete Rose, was he ever in there?
I know. Yeah, funny enough, I always thought for sure I would see Pete Rose. I never did see Pete.
He was trying to, shed that.
They didn't have a sports book then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But nothing comes for free, man. I mean, you talked about all these great things, and maybe hindsight is what's turning you into great stories. What was the downside?
Again, well, it was the hours. Like I felt like I had no life outside the casino because I would be there, 10 hours, 12 hours every day working. And then when you weren't there working, you were sleeping because you're working from like 6
because you were just running marathon every day.
Yeah. And, you would forget to get groceries or you'd just forget to do some of the basic things because you're just working all the time. But it was a lot of fun with, like roommates. We had roommates and they were all valets, so we all worked together and so yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
What was the part then that made you say, enough's enough, it's time to move on?
I got fired.
Oh. Do tell.
Well, a little history about the company I worked for. They were valets who decided to go out for themselves, and they underbid the company they worked for, and that's how they got started. And then they created this company.
Okay.
Short story, I did the same thing. We heard stories that they were going to try and find ways to limit how much tips we were making, and we were all concerned about our paycheck.
Sure.
And I knew the contract was coming up, and so I met with like a lawyer and some different people, and we actually came up with a bid and submitted it way early. We thought early enough, but apparently they liked the company they were working for so much that they had signed a deal early, and I didn't know it. So I missed, and I guess it was only by a week. So as soon as that happened, and I did everything anonymously, but as soon as they found that out, everybody, it was like a witch hunt.
Oh, I'll bet.
It didn't take long to figure out who it was, but
right.
But yeah, my one boss at the time, he's like, man, I wish you had told me. He's like, I would have helped you. He's like, we could have done that.
Now you're like, shit, I got to go back to college.
But I know. If it had worked, I'd been a millionaire overnight. But yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you very much for sharing these stories about being a casino valet. At this time of the podcast, I normally ask Chris, what have we learned today?
Yep, I learned for only $200, Russ will hang out with me at the strip club.
You're damn straight he will. Yeah, and he'll keep that money tight.
Yes.
That's right.
I learned the next time I'm going to a casino, I'm looking out for gypsies. I had no idea, but I'm sure they're still out there. Undoubtedly.
For sure.
All right, well, thank you very much, Russ, for joining us. I'm Scott McLaughlin,
I'm Chris Kiernan.
saying we'll see you at work.
Thank you for listening to the Not in the Job Description podcast. If you have a story you'd like to share, or if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, please let us know by sending us an email with a brief description of your story to stories@notinthejob.com.